When you're looking at a metabolic pathway or any sort of chemical pathway, it's easy to forget that what it represents is these molecules being interconverted between one another, not just a pool of all these molecules. I mean, you do have a pool of all these molecules, but you get that by interconverting them. So, for example, in the citric acid cycle, you start with acetyl-CoA and oxaloacetate. So maybe you're getting your acetyl-CoA from pyruvate. You generate the acetyl-CoA. Now you're going to smash it together with oxaloacetate to give you citrate, which is then going to isomerase to give you isocitrate dehydrogenase, which will oxidatively decarboxylate to give you α-ketoglutarate dehydrogenase, which is then going to oxidatively decarboxylate to give you sustainably, which is then going to become succinate, which is then going to become fumarate through the oxidation. You hydrate that to get malate, you oxidize that again, and booyah, you're back at oxaloacetate. And this is why it works as a cycle, because now if you take another pyruvate, say, so you get another acetyl-CoA, it doesn't have to be from pyruvate, but you have some acetyl-CoA from somewhere. Now you have an oxaloacetate that you can add this new acetyl-CoA to. And so now you go around the cycle and you interconvert these molecules, and now you have another oxaloacetate that you can repeat this cycle if you were to bring in another acetyl-CoA. But things didn't have to go that way. One of the great things about the citric acid cycle is that you can remove these intermediates and use them to do other things. So say you start the cycle and now you go to malate, but instead of going to oxaloacetate, you actually take that malate away to go make glucose. And because you can't take oxaloacetate out of the mitochondria. So basically, you take that malate out to go make glucose, and now you have another acetyl-CoA come in. Well, it's out of luck because there's no oxaloacetate there. Therefore, we need a reaction that's going to bring in oxaloacetate. But rather than bring in oxaloacetate itself, what we're actually going to do is maybe we bring in malate, or we bring in fumarate, or succinate, or sustainably, or α-ketoglutarate, or isocitrate, or citrate. Any of these are going to allow us to replenish the cycle, go through that cycle, make that oxaloacetate. And once we have that oxaloacetate, now we can bring in another acetyl-CoA and we can go around the cycle again. And so the citric acid cycle is awesome because you can take stuff out, but you have to actually remember to replenish the carbons. And the reactions that we have that replenish the carbons in the cycle, we call those anaplerotic reactions. Acetyl-CoA is not going to cut it. Acetyl-CoA is only 2 carbons, but any of these intermediates are 4 or more carbons. So you've got 6, you've got 5, you've got 4. When you're adding acetyl-CoA, that's only 2 carbons. And so if you take out any of these, you're taking out more than 2 carbons. And so you need to put in more than 2 carbons in order to get this cycle going. You need to put in at least 4 carbons. And the way that we can put 4 carbons in is by adding in any of these intermediates. And the reactions that we have that replenish the carbons in the cycle, we call those anaplerotic reactions. In humans, we don't have a way to get acetyl-CoA into the pathway by like joining 2 up or anything like that. Instead, we rely on anaplerotic reactions that are going to replenish these other intermediates. For example, we were looking at how pyruvate can lose a carbon to become acetyl-CoA to go into the pathway. But pyruvate can also gain a carbon through pyruvate carboxylase instead of pyruvate dehydrogenase. So we take pyruvate carboxylase, we add a carbon, now we get oxaloacetate. And so that's why pyruvate is able to therefore act as an anaplerotic. And this is therefore going to be an anaplerotic reaction that's going to replenish the carbons that you would take out if you were to go and say, take malate out to go make glucose. And so we often call compounds that are anaplerotic to the citric acid cycle, we can say they're glucogenic because we could take malate out to go make glucose, and those anaplerotic reactions are then going to be able to replenish it. And so this is why you might see something like glucogenic versus ketogenic when talking about amino acids. The amino acids whose skeletons can be broken down into something that is in the citric acid cycle or to pyruvate, we call those glucogenic. And the ones that are broken down into acetyl-CoA or acetyl-acetyl-CoA, we call those ketogenic. They're not glucogenic because we need the oxaloacetate to be present in order for those carbons to be brought in. And we can't bring in the carbons from acetyl-CoA without having the 4 carbons in the pathway to begin with. But we can bring in malate, we can bring in α-ketoglutarate from glutamate, we can bring in oxaloacetate from aspartate. all these various reactions. Odd-chain fatty acids, we can convert the leftovers to sustainable-CoA. So we have lots of ways to get carbons into the TCA. But in order to get the carbons from acetyl-CoA into the TCA, you've got to have the oxaloacetate present. So although we really do have kind of like a pool of these different molecules and different concentrations of them to help control the thermodynamics, if you were to think about a single molecule, it's interconverting between these forms. And so if you take something away, well, now you're going to have to add something in because you need that oxaloacetate to bring in that acetyl-CoA.